again, between ETF and some of the HMOs that serve the state employee group, that look like there's going to be some cost savings that's going to be captured anyways. So I think it's going to be.
Saying though about the difference between a 1+1 versus a family.
Yeah, I mean, I'll look into that closer. I mean, we don't get into that level of negotiation. ETF does that with either the union representation or directly with that group that they, sometimes it's not necessarily a represented group that they negotiate with. So, but I'll absolutely ask that question and find out if they consider that. So, okay, thank you very much for coming. Ann Schweitzer. Ann? Yes. Thank you for coming.
For years, I've been hearing state government officials complain about the interference at the federal level, that many decisions being made at the federal level should be made at the state level, talking about local control. And I guess what I'm concerned now is that I'm seeing this happening where I think the state is interfering with local control. What I'm addressing right now are some of the proposals that Senator Dewey Strobel, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, has put forth regarding referendums for schools. They seem to be very punitive for school districts that I think have been forced to go to referendum in order to meet their costs, to update their facilities, that type of thing. Every day it seems like he's coming out with another one. And I guess I wish he would address that because, for instance, this one is particular that they would reduce state aid for districts that exceed the revenue limits through a referendum. The reduction in aid would be equal to 20% of the amount the district raises property taxes above the revenue limits. That state aid would then be redistributed, to the rest of the state school districts.
Right.
I think that when you have a school board or a school district go to the community and ask for a referendum, the community approves it, and they know the impact it's going to have on their property taxes, and they still improve it, then why would you go back and penalize the district for doing what you set up they had to do in order to raise revenue? And I also don't think it's fair to give that money to other districts saying, wow, you exceeded your limits, we're going to give it to so-and-so. Yeah, this is creating such a problem with the disparity between wealthy districts, national districts, or other districts in your area to be able to raise funds to be competitive and have equal opportunities. You have areas like Heartland, Oregon, where there's growing populations, their attendance is growing. They can afford to do amazing things with their schools. But what about our other schools? Shouldn't it be equal level for all children in the public school system, no matter where they live in the state of Wisconsin?
Right. Yeah, and Senator Strobel has, he's rolled out, I think there's like 5 or 6 separate bills. They definitely have not gained much momentum since they were introduced. I'm not going to say that without articulating how each and every one of them works. I'm not sure that any of them are necessarily in a position right now to pass because of some of the stuff you just articulated. I think people see it as trying to roll back something that's kind of been in place for a while and people have grown accustomed to. And the only one that may have some movement, and it's because it's more about clerks who have to oversee a lot of those elections. The frequency of referendum votes is of concern to some clerks, and I think that's one of them that's in there. But other than that, there hasn't been a lot of momentum or discussion about some of Senator Strobel's bills. So, okay, thank you. Lynn Sharkey.
I had several, but I'll limit it to a couple. I did wanted to make a comment about what Deb said about the WEDC, and they did have an audit, and the audit discovered that they were delinquent on loans of $11 million.
Right.
Which is, okay.
Yeah,
And also,
there's never been a state agency that's been audited as often as WEDC. I think within the first year, Paul Jaden was the first director. He really botched it and messed up kind of common practices that should have been put in place because it's not a state agency per se. It's still a corporation that functions much differently. So,
well, it also said that the WEDC retained $5.3 million, and tax credits that was supposed to be turned over within a week, and they turned it over after the audit.
Yeah, there's a lot of give and take between WEDC, specifically in the Finance Committee. So if there's a 1310, which is an actual appropriation meeting, they watch them like a hawk. There's a lot of give and take. The new director right now, I think, is doing a very good job. And as long as we can continue to see that we have a state agency in place, state corporation now, that can continue to advance and work with local levels of economic development, which is always the most important. I mean, there's never anything coming out of Madison that is very specific to any municipality or to any industrial park that is so significant that it's necessarily on the radar screen unless it's brought to them by the local officials. And that's what happened. That's why John Deere came to WEDC and said, listen, we're considering this. We can build this in North Carolina. We can build it in Horicon. You know, we need to work with somebody to try and get that done. That's what WEDC does. And they work with a lot of the locals and have great success with that. So,
Okay, 2 easy ones. What's the status of the DNR magazine?
the status is that there's been no decision made. So I think it's about a $300,000 appropriation. I've got a lot of contacts on it, a lot more than I ever anticipated.
And what's the status of the publishing minutes in the newspaper versus on a website?
Did Andrew Davis leave? I don't want to, I'm just kidding, he runs the newspaper. It's a good question. I don't know exactly where we're going to land on that one. Obviously, the minutes can be still published in the local newspaper. It's just whether or not the state is going to continue to have the mandate in place that, you know, whatever municipality or school district is required to print that, if they're going to have to pay that small newspaper to do that. That's really what the issue is. It's not whether or not they can be published, it's whether or not, you know, they're still going to pay the newspapers to do it. That's really what the question is.
Okay.
So you probably have a mixed bag on that, I would think, so.
Okay, the last one. Do you support the Senate Bill 48, the lead bill?
Lead lateral bill?
Yeah, allows local municipalities to offer grants and low-interest loans to homeowners that want to replace their lead.
Yeah, so Senator Rob Coles, Republican from Green Bay, is the author of the bill. He's trying to come up with a way that some municipalities would probably, there would be an incentive for them to replace lead laterals as their regular replacement of like a street. Let's say you're going to rebuild a street in Mayville, and you know that there is lead laterals that come off of that main. I'm talking way above my head probably on this. I don't know if public works that well. But that there would be some type of program in place that would be an incentive for the municipality as well as for the homeowner to get that lead lateral replaced. So he's trying to come up with kind of a low-interest loan or a grant program that would make that happen. So far, the Assembly is not supporting the Senate's bill, our bill. They're devising their own, and I expect that they'll probably come up with something soon, and then we'll probably have to sit down and figure out kind of what the middle ground is on that. No, there's a willingness to try and fix this problem, and Governor Walker said publicly, please get a bill to my desk because I want to sign it into law. So I think we are moving in the right direction now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Richard Fink.
Hi,
Richard.
I live north of Mayville, and I'm happy to be a supervisor on the board. There will be more speaking on the issues.
Yeah, sure.
Also, I'm on the Mayville School Board, and I hope you keep the budget as it is because we did get pretty close to the budget. And the other thing I want to speak on is I'm a dairy farmer and a grain farmer. And a year ago, I was on a policy and resolution committee which represents Farm First, which is a co-op which represents 5,000 dairy farmers. One of the resolutions was to raise the gas tax or registration fees, whatever it takes.
Right.
5,000 farmers agreed to this, and maybe it's time to listen that, hey, we need more money on our town roads, along with the county roads, along with the state roads. I've got a trucking business, and I drive on certain county and town roads where my dashboards have loosened up because of how rough the roads are. And you've heard plenty of it from other sources, from the counties, from the towns. I was a town board chairman for years. We got $20,000 more this year for roads. That covered 1 mile of just resurfacing.
Right.
So we need some kind of a tax somewhere. The other question I have flat tax that they're working on?
I'm not. The assembly is done.
The assembly is
Yeah,
working
the
on.
assembly has done.
I'd like to know how many exemptions are going to be removed if you go to the flat tax on the sales tax.
It gets rid of all of them.
So that's pretty good.
Which makes it,
The average
yeah,
farmer has about an average of a 5% income on their investment. If you put another 5.5% on, it would be very short.
yeah. Yes, Dale Kuyinga, representative from Waukesha County, rolled out a plan 2 weeks ago now that, I mean, like I said, I give him credit for working on something as complex as he did and the way he rolled it out. I mean, it took a couple days before people kind of sunk their teeth in it, and it just doesn't have any momentum. So I don't anticipate that's where we're going at all. Which means, and I could just talk in general about transportation, I'm not sure how many people have a question related to that. So where we're at today is the governor won't sign a new gas tax increase, and he refuses to sign a vehicle registration increase, which, as you know, is $75 on cars. So, so what we're left with is trying to come up with other options kind of within the revenue streams that we currently have. So the one, obviously, is general purpose revenue. So if you want to do some bonding, the problem is we can't go to SEG funding anymore, which is the transportation fund, because the level of debt there is it's going to be about 24 cents as we conclude this budget on every dollar that goes into transportation, and that's strictly gas tax and the vehicle registration that we're collecting right now. So we continue to do bonding, we continue to support it with SEG funding, and the problem with that is we still continue to work on roadways and try and tackle projects that are available, but the level of debt is too high. And members realized that in the last budget. So where we're at now is talking about general purpose revenue, which is the larger pot of money, which is put together between income, sales, and corporate tax. As the state of Wisconsin collects that sits in that general purpose revenue pot. Now, the short-term solution to get us out of this budget would be to utilize some of that GPR to do enough bonding. No one is where Walker is, which is to delay every project out there. He makes no initiative to advance anything. So I think at the end of the day, that is the short-term solution, if that's what it takes to get the votes. If we can go beyond that, then you can do some GPR and probably get us into 4 years, 6 years out, which would be a better overall plan. And then the last thing that's out there now, I have a meeting at 4 o'clock today at the Capitol, is if we have to see whether or not we're going to explore some of these federal slots related to open road tolling, which is controversial, and a lot of trucking companies don't like it because they believe it's a tax on trucking, on commerce. But it is a conversation that's going on because it's being forced at the federal level. As President Trump talks about an infrastructure package, and they're saying anywhere from $500 million to close to $1 trillion if they get there. I don't think they'll get there. Part of that is going to be opening the door to tolling for many of the states. So I think whether we want to or not, I think it's definitely a discussion we have to have. Whether or not Walker would be there, we don't know. That's what this meeting at 4 o'clock today is about. And then beyond that, kind of discussions with the Assembly and the senators to see kind of where we're at. Overall, we have a massive problem in southeastern Wisconsin. We've got we have 6 projects, that each one of them about $1 billion. It's called the megas. So the mega projects that have existed for some time have not been addressed. Okay, so we continue to fall further and further and further behind on those projects. I'm almost at the point where we're reviewing this as a separate public works project. If you're going to tackle those, you've got to come up with a revenue stream that's going to be sufficient enough to address that. Okay. Right now, we're trying to pay for them out of the SEG fund, out of the transportation fund. There's not enough revenue there. And even if I put a 10-cent gas tax on tomorrow, it doesn't put it down. It just doesn't do it. You know, it wouldn't solve the problem. So we've got to come up with something much more significant, and tolling is the only thing that's really hanging out there. Tolling doesn't raise millions, it raises billions of dollars. And it's pretty easy to forecast that based on what they're taking in at the state line in Illinois. So that's kind of the level of discussion. The governor's not going to budge And as long as he doesn't budge, it's gonna be hard to force his hand. So that's kind of where we're at on transportation right now. So,
Thank you.
thank you. I don't know how many other people had transportation questions, but that's kind of where we're at. Sally Litka, Juno? Sally,
Hi.
welcome.
My question revolves around the Wisconsin retirement system.
Yes, ma'am.
As you know, it's the best in the nation,
It is.
and it's completely self-funded. What I question though is why legislators always seem to be proposing changes to the minimum retirement age or changes to the formula that's used to figure that. Why, with all the other problems the legislators have, why are there people that still are proposing these things, and where does it stand right now?
Kind of the bills you're referring to, same author, Senator Strobel. So Dewey has been kind of rolling these out one by one. And I mean, I get what he's trying to do. He's just trying to make sure kind of that there's a level playing field between where state employees are and even, anyone that participates in ETF versus kind of everyone else. So I understand what he's doing, but I can just tell you. Yeah. He thinks there's kind of two systems. There's the private retirement 401k system, and then, what we have with ETF and the state retirement system. And he's trying to make parity. He's trying to say it's not fair that state employees are here and that all other employees in the state are over here. So he's trying to bring parity to that. But I can tell you, the momentum is not there again for some of these bills that have been introduced. So I understand his argument. It's just, it doesn't, they just don't seem to gain much momentum.
For me, it seems that there's a certain amount of hostility toward public workers that came in with Governor Walker. And I think that...
Oh, Act 10, yeah, no, Act 10. Yeah.
And I see no reason to find ways to dig or jab at public workers like, yeah.
No,
So,
I understand.
but you're telling me though that it's really doesn't look like it's going anywhere.
They don't. I mean, I would say, there's always going to be, I think, legislation introduced that tries to tweak ETF. Sometimes it's based on the investments that ETF makes.
But if
SWIB,
it's self-funded, why would the legislature even care?
the SWIB board makes some pretty controversial decisions, and I think if you saw a couple months ago, there were articles about the level of bonuses that were given to those that make those type of decisions.
I did see
It's in the
that.
millions,
But it's-
So there's
But
controversy in
it's
and around it
still
sometimes.
a self-funded system.
Which is why the legislature, in a Republican, or it doesn't matter where you're at, that's why we don't mess around with it. It's
Good.
because
Keep it that way.
because it is very self-sustaining and in much better shape than what you see in some other states.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? James Conn. Jim? Yep.
Excuse me. I guess the first comment I would make is I support just about everything everybody said so far. And I especially would second the statements that were made both by Dick and Dodge. I'm a school board member in Mayville also. We are very dependent on the proposed increase in per student aid to make our budget balanced.
Right.
Issue I would like to, a question I'd like to ask you, an issue. In the last week or so, the legislature just passed, and you were one of the sponsors of the bill to reapprove or relicense groundwater or high-capacity wells without further analysis by the Department of Natural Resources. As you well know, groundwater issues are a major issue in the central part of the state, which is my home. One of the lakes I grew up on is being impacted by those high-capacity wells. What that bill did was sell our groundwater to the highest bidder, obviously.
Yes.
And that seems to be how we're choosing to operate here in the state. The highest bidder is going to get all the water they want. Everybody else, all the lakes, the streams in the state are going to be impacted by those high-capacity wells. Senator Cowles in previous sessions was working on a bill to really look in depth at management of our groundwater issues. And my understanding is that bill has gone nowhere. It is such a critical issue. 70% of the people in our state depend on groundwater for their drinking water and for our industry. We cannot continue to go ahead managing that resource, or the lack of management of that resource. We need to have legislation that's going to put proper regulation, and I understand the complexity of the issue. We can't just keep getting a high-capacity well to everyone who wants it with no regulation, and that's essentially what's happening. I mentioned the lake that I grew up in. The Lake Association contested the high-capacity well for a large dairy farm. And the administrative judge ruled that he limited the amount of water that they could use. Looking at the cumulative impact issue, that was a Supreme Court decision. And now the state has simply reissued the permit for that farm with taking away the judge's ruling on capacity, or his pumping capacity. So they're ignoring the proper management of our groundwater issues. Our lake would be impacted by several inches with that increased well capacity. So we have to come up with a realistic, thorough bill and to look at how we're going to manage the groundwater issues in Wisconsin. And I'd like to know your position on that and what's going to be done about it.
Well, first of all, full disclosure, this guy probably knows more than I do about No, I'll tell you, it is complex because, a court case eventually forced the legislature to pick between farming in all over the state, whether it's a CAFO or potato vegetable growers in the central part of the state, which is the Central Sands area, which is very sensitive to this issue. So it was kind of a no-win. How do we do this? So I think in a version that did not pass last time, which I actually held up and killed in the Senate, went much further than the bill that we just passed. This is much more about repair and replace of wells. Now, I will say, last summer the DNR did approve a number of other permits for wells, okay? But that was not a legislative action. That was something that the DNR did. So the repair and replace provisions of this bill apply to all of these high-capacity wells, okay? But there is a looks like it's going to cost about $750,000 study that will be very specific to Central Sands to determine whether or not some of these, and that's the problem, we don't have the science we need in some of these instances to say, yes, this stream is drying up because of the high cap well, or that this lake is being impacted by that. So I understand some people are saying, why don't you do the study first? Well, because there's a need, and certainly there is some guardrails now that are in place when it comes to a lot of these operations. It's a no-win for the legislature. You can't shut down these large agricultural operations when, first of all, they're employing everybody and they're creating about a third of all the revenue that's generated in the state. Agriculture is still one of the top three with tourism and manufacturing. So it's not like we just pull the rug out from underneath agriculture either. And then the ripple effect it has on so many other industries throughout the state. So it's a no-win, and we're watching it close. I think this bill is measured. I think it could have gone much further. And I'm hopeful once the study is completed, if we have to revisit this, or if we have to come up with a different strategy. If you talk to some of these large farmers in the central part of the state, they're like, wait a minute, we're the last guys on earth that want to see the wells somehow be impacted